Hello everyone, welcome to JS Geeks and my name is Deepak. Here in this tutorial we are going to be talking about PWA and a paraphernalia around PWA or a progressive web application. I'm also going to answer a few questions. So what are those burning questions? So let's just look at the list of questions that I'm going to be answering in this short video tutorial. So first one is, what is the full form of a PWA and what makes an application a progressive web application? Second question we are going to be answering is, who makes an application a PWA? And third is, what is a service worker and why it is important? The fourth is type of storage. What are the type of storage we can use in a progressive web application, and what are the available type of storage and why not to use others over one particular one, right? So we'll slightly deep dive into things, and we'll also try to see, write some code around it and see that how much of a quota is available on a web application and how it works. So in this episode of PWA, we are not exactly going to be writing the code just yet. We are going to be talking about things and technologies and tools around a progressive web application or a PWA. If you are a web developer and if you do not know about PWA, you are certainly missing out on something. As in the previous episode, we had seen that PWA brings in a lot of positive aspect on your web application. If you had seen my last episode, you may have noticed that by introducing PWA, Facebook, Flipkart, Amazon, and many other websites in this regard have reaped positive benefits. In the sense, user is able to engage on their websites better, their websites loads better, their website performs better, as a result of which their business also grows. So it is a very crucial aspect that we need to understand as a web developer what PWA is all about. And I built my first PWA back in 2018 when I was doing a consulting for a company, right? Ever since, I've become a huge fan of PWA, and then in this chapter and this entire series, I'm going to be talking about why I'm a huge fan, and you would also, I'm pretty sure, that become one like me by the end of this tutorial, right? So just stay along with me. Meanwhile, let's just answer all the 4 questions that we've listed in the top. So let's talk about the first question first, so which is, what is the full form of a PWA and what makes an application a progressive web application, and why it is a progressive web application, why it is not a simple web application. So progressive web application, as the full form of a PWA, employ progressive enhancement principle, meaning they start with the basic core functionality and progressively enhance the experience based on the capability of a user's device and browser. This ensures that all the users have access to the basic functionality, with those using modern browsers or device can enjoy enhanced feature. So what makes an application a progressive web application and how it is different from a regular web application is that the word progressive, and by that what we mean is that it is progressively adding functionality on top of your core functionality, right? So this is what about this is just a theory about PWA. Now let's just talk about the second burning question in this regard, which is, who makes an application a PWA? So service worker is responsible to make an application a PWA. Let me just take you quickly to my web browser and I'll show you the web application that I've built, and that you will also start building from the next tutorial onwards. So here you can see on your screen that I have built a basic PWA. So here is a logo, and then there are some icons and then all these things, right? So if you click on this, it takes you to the students marks list page, and then you have different subjects you can go back to. You can go here, same with computers and same with maths, right? So how it is able to do all of this and why it is so fast, let me just quickly take you to the application tab of my browser. So here in the application tab, you can see that I've clicked on the service worker tab over here. The service worker tab, as you can see that the source is over here, which is basically the ng-swworker.js. And you can see a lot of text written over here: install, wait, activate, and then stop and focus, and so on and so forth, right? So this is for the push and sync and periodic sync. Let's just we'll talk about this in the advanced section of a PWA. Let's just focus for this tutorial. Let's just focus about the theory part, and especially just the ng-swworker.js. So here at the ng-swworker.js, which is created by the Angular framework by adding a command, by running a particular ng add command, and then building an application. And currently I'm rendering this application at port number 8080 using HTTP server, right? So what makes an application a progressive application, as I said earlier, is the service worker. So this service worker is basically responsible to cache the assets and cache the API responses, and also able to render it very quickly. So if you quickly go to the network tab, and then if you just refresh this page, you would notice that some of the things are coming here on your size part is from the service worker. Some of them are from the disk cache, and some of them are directly coming from the internet, meaning I've hosted this teacher's profile application. This is the web API that I've built. This is the API that I've built, which is running locally on my system. And then if you look at all the other things which are coming from service worker, and that's why the load is pretty quick. So let me just quickly look at the performance as well of this particular application. So if I just refresh this page, I'll just take a while and then just load it over here. Let it just run. It'll run for about 7 seconds or so. So there you go. So now you can see that all the 4 essential events in the browser have taken place way before it hit the 2-second mark, right? So it is well under 2 seconds, and you can see that initiation happened at this level, and then the onload fired roughly around at this level, right? So you can see that the first load, the last content paint, and the first content paint, and all of that stuff. So you can see that the performance of this application has certainly become better. And now going back to the initial case studies that I had shown you in my first tutorial or in my first episode, you may have noticed that a lot of websites were able to reap a lot of benefits, and a lot of websites were really able to engage their users better. So how it was so? It is because that it loads faster, it renders faster, and it renders faster. It gives you a very happy feel as a user. And if you're using a website and gives you a happy feel, you would like to buy things and want to stay on that particular website. So that's why it is very important. As you may have noticed that all these 4 events fired up pretty quickly. So that's why you may understand that why it is important for us to learn a PWA as a software developer, and particularly as a web engineer, right? So now again, going back to the application tab, here you can see that ng-sw worker.js is attached, and this service worker, and we'll also see while writing the code that how it is done, and how you can cache certain resources, and how you can really how you cannot cache certain resources, meaning you can just define a configuration in your Angular web application and in your Angular web application code, and then it will render and it arrange all the codes accordingly. And we'll also deep dive into code and how we'll see that how it works, right? So that's about service worker. Now let's just talk about the third question, which is, what is a service worker? So service worker basically is a script that runs in your browser and manages caches for your application. It also works as a network proxy that can see all the outgoing requests and incoming responses. It can intercept and deliver a cache response instead of a regular response. It is preserved in the browser even after the app is closed. It is designed to optimize the end user experience of using an application all of the slow and unreliable networks. That's all about a service worker. So as we have seen, that service worker is a script, as also you can see over here on your browser, on my browser currently, that ng-sw-worker.js is a script, is a JavaScript file. Now if I click on it, you can see that all the JavaScript code is written. So this is basically a service worker. So service worker code is written inside this. It's basically a script which can intercept all the incoming and outgoing requests and responses respectively. It also it is also preserved even when your browser is closed. So let's just quickly check this. So let me open another tab and then just close this one, right? Now you can see that application is closed. Now let me open my app once again. Let's see if my service worker, if my browser was able to really retain the service worker over here. So let's just quickly the application, and there you go. You can see that the ng-sw-worker.js is still retained, right? So there is another thing that you can do. Let's say if you're currently, let's say if there are multiple browsers running and multiple web applications running on your browser, you can actually look at how many service workers are associated with it. So the command for it, or you can just simply go to the Chrome browser over here and then just write in this inspect service workers, and it will say that how many service workers are currently open. And in our case, it is just a local host 8080 which is running over here that you can see in the browser. So now let me see that if I open another website, let's say Flipkart for that matter. So if I open the Flipkart and let me go back here, and now you can see that there are 2 service workers are running in my browser window. The first one is the localhost 8080, the other one is the Flipkart application that I've just opened. So there you can see. Okay, so that's all about the service worker. Now the fourth question, which is a very important one, is about type of storage available in the web browser, right? So before answering that, I want to bring your attention to the other explanation that I've given so far for the other three questions. All that while I've been saying that ngsw worker.js or a service worker.js file is able to cache the responses and requests, and it is also able to intercept. As I said, cache, what it essentially means that it is able to store things in your browser. So if it is able to store things in my browser, that's why it is important for us to understand how many other storage mechanisms available inside the browser and why they are important and which one is particularly used in Service Worker. So there are multiple storage available in the web browser that you can use, and we only use IndexedDB and cache storage, and we'll see that why it is important and why do we do so. So the first one in this regard is the local storage. I'm pretty sure all of you, those who are working in web, would have used local storage. So local storage, as you can see, that it is basically specific to a particular domain. So if you click over here, you can see that the HTTP localhost 8080, meaning all the thing that you store over here would be available for this domain only, which is localhost 8080, right? Same goes with the session storage. But the difference between session storage and local storage is that the session storage is only specific to a particular tab. That means the moment you close the tab, that session storage stored things would be lost. So let me just quickly run an example. So let's say this one over here, and I'll open another tab, and let's say inspect, right? And if I'm doing an inspect, and let me quickly go to the application tab over here, and then let me try to add something here. Let's say name. Let me write my name, which is Deepak, and I've stored it, right? So now you can see that the session storage is stored over here. So let me quickly go to the first tab of mine, and I can see that there is nothing over here. Let me just refresh this here, and you would still find nothing written over here. So now let me just open the local storage, and let me store something, local name, that is Deepak, and let me save it. Now I have saved it in the first tab. Now let me quickly go to the second tab and try to see if the storage is able to persist it. Now you can, the moment you click on the second tab, you can see that local name Deepak is persisted across the tab, and it also persisted across the windows, meaning even if I'm opening a different browser window and trying to open the localhost 8080, the local storage would still persist. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Like same with the session storage. Session storage is cool that it is able to maintain only to the tab, but not across the tab, right? Then if these two storages are available, then why are not we using that in the service worker? Why are we talking about cache only? So the reason behind why we don't use local storage and session storage is that first one is that they are synchronous. So their API provides a synchronous way of adding it. If your application and if your storage is synchronous, and also you know that the browser execution is single threaded, so if it is synchronous, it will actually block your application, will not really let you do anything else until the read write operation finishes. So it's basically can impact a lot of negative, it can impact your application in a negative way, and that's why we don't really write things in local storage and session storage. It is basically common, the synchronous and blocking behavior is common in between these two. So local storage and session storage both are synchronous as well as blocking, meaning your single thread would be blocked while it does the IO, and that's why it can impact your application in a negative way. So let me just close the another tab, and let's put a refresh over here, and I can just delete these keys. I don't need them. You can simply come here, right click and delete, and same goes with the session storage. It's gone the moment you close the tab. So you can see the local storage and session storage, that's how they work. It's just a brief, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not really deep diving into all the aspect of local storage and session storage, but if you wish to know more about these, and if you really want me to create a lot of video tutorial around all of these separately, please do write down in the comment section below. I would love to do it, but then I think that I just want to focus on particularly on the PWA side, and why not local storage and session storage, particularly for the PWA. If you want to know, just write it down and I'll create a separate video tutorial for those. I'll not come to IndexedDB just yet. Let's talk about the Web SQL. So Web SQL was the old technology, right? And then even if you click on this tab, you can see that the Web SQL is deprecated. You can join the deprecation trial and keep using it until Chrome 123. So now we can see that the Web SQL is deprecated in the Chrome, but it is deprecated elsewhere as well. Like if you look at their browser, which are not using the Chromium engine, which for example is Safari and let's say Firefox, all of these are also have deprecated Web SQL. So Web SQL is not a very good space to use it, right? So this option is gone again. So now let's focus on cookies. Now you also have cookies available over here. So now you can see that the cookies also store certain amount of data, right? And then you can certainly store a few bytes of data or even a large amount of data in your cookies. And why not cookies, and why are we just focusing on IndexedDB and then the cache API? So why not cookies is because the moment you write things in the cookies, and then all these cookies are also attached with all the HTTP requests that your browser sends outside the network, right? So if you're writing a lot of amount of data in your cookies, your application and your request would become a lot heavier. In that sense, it'll again impact your web performance. So cookies, yes, you can write it, but then it is not really recommended, because you can, when the moment you write it, it touches with your request, and if it touches with the request, all your requests become a lot heavier, and that's why we don't really write anything in the cookies, even while we are doing the web SQL, even while we are doing the service worker caching and things like that, right? So that's all about local storage, session storage, and cookies. And now we have also seen why not to use local storage, session storage, web SQL, and cookies. Now let's just talk about the other important aspect, which is the app cache. So why not app cache? Why just the cache storage that we talk about in the service worker, right? So let's just talk about app cache now. So app cache is an older technology that allows web developers to specify which files the browser should cache and make available offline. It operates by creating a manifest file that lists URLs of resources that can be cached, right? Once a web application is cached using app cache, the browser will store these resources locally, allowing the application to be loaded and run without the internet connection. However, app cache has a limitation that it has been deprecated due to its complexities and drawbacks. So now you understand that app cache is deprecated again, and it is deprecated in favor of cache API, which is part of a service worker. So that's what essentially we are coming at, that we are going to be using. So now we have understood we can't use app cache, we can't use local storage, can't use session storage because of their own limitations. Same goes with the web SQL and cookies. Now let's talk about the cache API. So cache API is a pretty solid API that is used in storing a lot of assets and API request. Now we have not really spoken about IndexedDB and cache storage. So as you can see on your browser, there are two different sections, two different type of storage. So IndexedDB is a different one, and same goes with the cache. And I've asked a lot of developers while interviewing candidates for my company current organization, is that people usually get confused with IndexedDB and cache storage. Please understand this these two are different. So the general recommendation to use IndexedDB and cache storage, as you can see that cache storage and IndexedDB are different, so they are they're certainly used for different purposes. So in order to use cache storage, you must understand that if your application is making a network resources call, and if your app is loading the network content, you must use cache storage for such resources. And for every other data, use IndexedDB. So for example, the IndexedDB, for example, you can see on your screen that Angie SWDB control. If you click on it, you can notice that from this application, these are the resources which are stored over here, right? So these are, as you can see that, it has made a lot of, cache storage. We will talk about each of this when we start coding about Angular web framework introduce service worker. So as you can understand that cache storage is basically using these, it is only storing the things that it demands over the internet, and all the other assets that are locally, all the assets, right? So if you look at over here, so it says assets. As you can see that the name ends with assets, app, and cache. So basically all the assets, it stores the meta. So let's not talk about this. Again, it stores the assets. Its first one was storing the app cache. The second one over here, the one which is highlighted right now, is storing the assets, meaning the PNG file and things like that. Again, it's a meta. So now if you go back to the third last, which is this one, it is basically storing the API responses. So you can see that, all these 4 tabs over here. Let me just open them properly over here, and you can read what it is. So you can see that the application JSON, and if I open this and expand this a little bit more, you can see that it is essentially storing, all of these responses over here. So you can see that it is stored like this, right? So you can see over here. There are a few APIs that I make a call of. The first one is the all student API. The other one is the physics and computers and chemistry and maths. So chemistry and maths is the one which it is storing right now, right? So you can see over here. So now if you come here, this is the least recently used LRU. So LRU data is something which gets stored over here. And these are the API ages. So but then just understand for now that these are the things that that cache API or cache storage has stored. So if you look at these IndexedDB, the recommendations say that everything that is being called from the internet, you must store in the cache storage, which is over here, and everything else which is not really called over the internet is something that you can store in the IndexedDB, meaning the local data that you have. So I don't really have any local data here in this application that I needed to install in the IndexedDB or needed to save in the IndexedDB. That's why I've just left it empty for now. But just it is important for us to understand, why it is there and what is the difference. So I'll repeat again. The recommendation is to use IndexedDB and cache storage. You can use cache storage for all the things that you bring over the internet, and application specific data is the thing that you stores in the IndexedDB. There is another important aspect about IndexedDB, right? So IndexedDB is something that we have been using for a while, and it is available in the practice for a very long time now. So IndexedDB was created long ago, right? So it was created at the time when the promises were not really available. So the de facto style of using IndexedDB is not really using the core APIs per se. We have a very popular wrapper available for IndexedDB, which is a promise wrapper. And let me just give you the link of that particular NPM package wherein you can just go and use it. So let me go to my internet and web browser, and let me type IDB and promise npm, and there you go. You can see that monthly or weekly download for this particular library is pretty huge, meaning it is very, very popular, and that's what exactly we always use. In fact, whenever I have to use IndexedDB, I don't really use the native APIs. I try to use this wrapper, which is not really a callback based, but it is a promise based. If you're comfortable using the callback based API, you can basically use the IndexedDB, the one which is available from the browser. So let me just open that as well. Right. So always come here to refer to if you have any doubt about particular technology, I always suggest people to go to the MDN and look at the documentation themselves and come back with their own answers instead of searching in the Stack Overflow and elsewhere, right? So if you want to understand the technology, the documentation is the best place to learn things from, right? So I think we have spoken about IndexedDB as well, cache storage, and every other thing. Now I'll just quickly touch base on few other things as well, which is the file system API and file system access API. So both these API, we are not going to be using it exactly, but it is important for us to understand that these are also available in your browser, something that you can use. If you want to use file system API or file system access API, you're very welcome to use it. And if you want to know more about these APIs, please do write down in the comment section below. I'll create a separate video for it. But in the scope of PWA and a service worker, I'm not really going to be touching upon these two APIs in detail. I'm just going to be talking in general things about these two APIs. So the first one I'm talking about is the file system API, right? So file system API, if I come here, so what it says is that it gives you access to files on a device system, allow read, write, and management capabilities, right? So, and read and write files in your browser in your local system. You can basically use file system API to read it. There's a problem though. So what is the problem that I want to highlight? So let me just open another important website, which is can I use, right? So can I use.com. I come here and let me just write this. I'm not sure that if you have really seen this page or not in the past, but I recommend all my web developers to really keep this and keep a note of this caniuse.com. It is a very handy tool and a very handy website, right? So file system access API is not really available in all the browsers. And as you can see that all it comes out as red or dark green color, meaning it has a partial support and it doesn't really have full support. File system API, file system access API, or file system API is again an API that you can use, to basically store the data, but then it is again not supported across all the browsers, so let's not use it. And also, I feel that the Chrome or Chromium based engines are the one which are really leading the pack. So use it with your own understanding. And file system access API is an API which is responsible for providing you the access to file system, right? So file system access API and file system API, both of them are used together and sometimes independently as well, but then used to access and to read and write and edit records in your local system. But then again, these are something which are very high level, and then you must only use it when you really want to use it, since I'm talking about the browser storage and all these storage capabilities of a browser. And that's why it is important for me to just touch upon these two things. So that's why I have come here and shown you that these two type of storage are also available in the web browser space, something that you can use. But then again, we don't use it in in creating a service worker or a PWA, right? So let me just close this right up and go back to the application that we're talking about. So speaking of file system and file system access API, it is also important for us to see that, let's say if you want to know how much is the storage available for you to use in your browser, you can actually see that very easily. So how you can see it basically by looking at a global object, which is a navigator storage. So navigator dot storage, right, dot estimates store capacity. I hope you're available. I hope that you understand that await is top level await is now available in V8 engine, right? So you don't really have to write async in the functions to make use of await, and that's what I have done it. Like otherwise, if I were to do it in the past, I would have to write async and then await inside a function to be able to read this particular API. So if I just press enter, right? So let's see what is there in the store capacity. So here is the thing. So first it talks about the quota, meaning this much of bytes of data is available in my system to use, and how much is used. It's over here, right? So if you want to further see that what is the usage detail, you can see that the cache resources are being used is 2311424 bytes of data, and service worker registration is using 67831 byte of data, right? So the API that I've just spoken about is the storage API, storage meaning which is available inside the navigator object, so that you can see over here and can fiddle around with it. So ladies and gentlemen, this is all about storage so far, and I'll just talk about the other things, right? So as you can see, as I've spoken about the storage capacity, it is also important for us to understand that what are these, is it really a common across all the browsers? What are the three common browsers that we use? So first one is obviously the Chrome, which is something which I personally love and adore a lot. And the second one is the Firefox and obviously Safari. And Internet Explorer, I know that it has died that last year, but still there are some organizations which are using it. So the storage capacity I want to highlight is that I want to highlight a point that the storage capacity is basically different for all these different browsers. Okay, Internet Explorer 10 and later can store up to 250 MB of data, and Firefox allows browser to store up to 50% of the free disk space to use the storage data. And in some cases, let's say if you talk about the Safari browser, it appears to me that it allows roughly about 1 GB of data, and when the moment 1 GB is reached, it prompts you to increase 200 MB of data every time it increases there. And then if a PWA is added to a home screen on a mobile Safari, it appears to create a new storage container, and nothing is shared between a PWA and a mobile Safari. So once your quota has been hit for an installed PWA, there doesn't appear to be any way to request additional storage, right? So this is a drawback of a storage in a Safari browser. This is a drawback of a PWA in a Safari browser, right? The Safari browser is something that it is not really a leader of a pack. It is basically the Chrome browser which is leading the pack in terms of all the technology improvement and implementation. And browser storage is no exception in that regard. So that's all about the first episode. I would like to end this episode here, and in the next one we'll start creating the application that you see on your browser right now from ground up, in which we'll see that how to create a basic application. And we have by the way, I've made this application using material library of Angular, right? So same is what I'll teach you. I'll follow, you just need to follow along with me, and then I'll take you to the entire journey of PWA and how to use and what are the things that are involved in it. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to all what I've said. It's an absolute pleasure to host tutorials for the community. I'm basically a self-taught developer, right? So I started using web 10 years ago, and ever since I'm so grateful to the community who has written so many beautiful articles all over the internet and such a great resources available in the web community particularly. And it is my humble attempt to give back to this community where I've got so much of benefits from, right? So please do write down in the comment section below if particularly you want me to focus on things that you want me to improve. And if you're liking my work, please don't forget to subscribe and hit a bell icon on my channel. And I'm going to be posting more such videos in the future. For now, let's just end this theory part. And from next tutorial onwards, I'm going to be writing a code from ground up wherein you would create an application that you see on your screen, a PWA, using Angular material and all the other paraphernalia around PWA. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to subscribe and hit a bell icon again. And thanks for listening in. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.